Happy New Year, everybody. It's 2020, and I'm going to start the year off with a special present. So, this is 2020 on 2020. So, I'll be watching me on 2020.
You're fat and old.
Come here, you little...
Tonight, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace is here with the story of one of those teenagers who was driven to the brink. Chris?
Diane, this is the story of a very close call. A student who had been picked on for so many years, he felt the only way to release his rage was through violence. He carefully designed a plan to get back at his classmates, and he openly admits that had school administrators not stepped in, chances are he would have hurt someone.
It's like anger to the next level. It's like an unfocused hatred.
Jim Myers had a plan to get back at the students who had teased and bullied him for so long. Last spring, the high school junior was ready to retaliate.
It's definitely a feeling that this is the only answer, to just cause as much pain and suffering as you possibly can, because that's what you've been through.
I would possibly describe him as a time bomb ready to go off.
Pamela Bolden is vice principal of Eastern Senior High School in Voorhees, New Jersey. Along with psychologists, other school administrators, even Jim himself, she says this was a boy prepared to lash out. How serious a threat do you think Jim was at that point?
The fact that he had already come up with a plan or a scenario, I think it was a pretty serious threat.
There have been all too many of these boys. Luke Woodham, Kip Kinkle, Michael Carneal, and Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, the killers at Columbine, the deadliest school massacre in U.S. history. This is the story of one more boy on the brink of joining this frightful list.
I've basically been mocked for just about anything you could say. I've been mocked for the clothing I've worn. I've been mocked for my hygiene habits, for my appearance. I've been called retarded. I've been called gay.
And what does that do, a steady drumbeat of that over the years?
It just wears away at you. It makes you angrier and angrier and angrier.
Jim Myers was born into a middle-class family in southern New Jersey. They enjoyed vacations and holidays together until his parents divorced when he was 3.
You know, he's always kind of seemed not quite with it.
Jim's father, Steve Myers, a computer programmer, says as his son grew, he began to look and act different than other kids. The father could only watch, as Jim was excluded by other children and spent a lot of time alone.
As a father, it's been kind of frustrating for me, but, you know, I never knew quite what to do about it.
It started in elementary school. Jim describes himself as a social alien there, recalling how he was teased and physically bullied. By second grade, he started to show signs of a violent temper.
There are numerous people whom I would just have loved to, like that. In fact, in middle school, I lashed out so violently, I actually forgot what I was doing, and I hit a teacher.
And had she done anything to you?
No, she hadn't done anything to me.
So this was just your rage at everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
But as the years went on, the harassment only intensified. Jim's grades started dropping, and he would often pretend to be sick, just to get away from school.
If you ask anybody, he's like, yeah, he's a pretty weird kid.
Roland Spurbeck and his friends are called bullies by many of their classmates. They say Jim Myers has always been an easy target, because he's different.
Just like, you know, like the stronger ones make fun of the weak ones.
And it's just always been that way?
Yeah, and it probably always will, like, that's school.
A little more than 3 years ago, Jim Myers started coming here to Eastern High School, along with 2,000 other kids. He tried to fit in, even joining the student theater club. But despite his best efforts, Jim came to have the same feelings here of being an outcast, as well as a growing sense of rage.
Yeah, I was like ready to go nuts on some of those people.
When you say go nuts, like what?
I mean, they're sitting there laughing at you. This pain you're going through is funny to them. And it's like, what? This is not funny. This is painful. I want you to feel the pain.
Like other kids who have exploded, Myers liked to listen to music with violent lyrics.
Now you're all gonna die.
He also spent hours playing violent video games.
When you're feeling like you just want to kill something, you could just play a violent video game and kill lots of things.
The video games I'm not real happy about personally, but he has to do something.
The relationship between violent kids and their families is puzzling to many of us. Steve Myers admits he may have been out of touch with his son.
Other than being isolated, I couldn't see that he was all that unhappy.
Do you feel you've known what's going on in Jim's head?
Oh, I don't try and guess what's going on in people's heads.
The boy says what was brewing inside him last spring was dark and ugly. He felt depressed and isolated at his lowest point ever. Then came Columbine. The death toll, 14 students and 1 teacher. Carnage that gave a focus to Myers' fantasies.
And looking at myself, I was like, could I have the potential to do this?
And what was the answer?
And I realized that, yes, I did have the potential to do this.
He kept a journal describing how he identified with the Columbine killers.
Why Harrison Klebel did it, the teasing and harassment that some kids must endure, is the heart of this matter. I can easily imagine a never-ending stream of sarcastic comments. I know such pain firsthand.
It didn't stop there. Myers got a map of his school and carefully plotted how he could strike back.
Administrators like to think of their school as a pretty secure and safe place. But there are numerous ways to sneak into this school. You could come in through the boiler room, that's usually not locked, and go right to the cafeteria. Then you start shooting, and then obviously when the people hear the shooting, they're going to duck. They're screaming, shouting, yelling, whatever, and I'd just be holding the gun up. I'd fire a couple of final shots and say they were all blanks in a cold, quiet voice.
There's kind of a thin line between it just being blanks and a terrifying spree and it being bullets and the real thing.
And that's what upset me, is that I realized how close I was to the real thing.
In the days after Columbine, administrators here at Eastern High School were consumed with one question: can it happen here? Vice Principal Pamela Bolden says that one day at the end of school, she noticed Jim Myers standing here by the payphone. And something told her to reach out to him.
I think my opening comment to him was, "So Jim, what do you think about the situation at Columbine High School?" His answer was something to the fact of, "I think I'm a lot like those two."
As Bolden pressed him, Jim began to describe his fantasies.
He talked a little bit about staging a battle from the Civil War, but the location of this battle was going to be in the senior high school.
And what was he going to use as weapons?
Automatic weapons.
It never went beyond Jim's imagination. He never actually tried to get any guns. But Bolden was still so worried she wouldn't even allow Jim on the bus to go home that day. Instead, she called Jim's father.
My reaction is she was overreacting.
Even when she told you he's had these fantasies, he's looked at a map, he's actually thought about how to pull this off? Overreacting?
It's one thing to fantasize about something, it's another thing to pull it off.
But when Jim was seen by psychologists, they too thought it was serious. The boy was ordered to stay at this mental hospital for 5 days and permitted to return to school only if he remained under a counselor's care. Ms. Bolden says that she thought you were a time bomb waiting to go off.
I probably was at that time. I definitely would have acted out in some way, and I probably would have hurt somebody. Don't talk to me about right and wrong, preacher.
Now a senior, Jim recently acted in the school play and says he feels more comfortable with the other kids.
One of the things I've learned is that I'm not alone. You have to take the initiative. You're not as powerless as those bullies make you want to feel.
But all of Jim's problems have not magically disappeared. His father seems as distant as ever.
I do not understand what he was saying. To this day, I don't really understand what he was thinking.
Have you talked to him about it?
Not really. What goes on in your mind is a privacy issue. You can hang you for actions, but you can't hang you for what you're thinking.
But Mr. Myers, it's your boy.
Yeah, but I'm not going to pretend to be Mr. perfect daddy, whatever that means.
How many Jim Myers do you think there are in the school?
I would say maybe 20 or so.
Really? 20 other kids in as much pain and as close to the breaking point as he was?
I'm sure that there are some that are still out there suffering in silence.
Jim Myers says, ignore these kids at your own peril, that they desperately need to be heard. Do you sometimes think I could have been one more of these poster children with Dylan Klebold, Eric Harris, and Kip Kinkle, and, you know, Jim Myers could have been one more of these kids.
I was kind of considering it with almost a relish. It would be like, finally, some form of recognition for who I am.
Jim Myers, who just celebrated his 18th birthday, still sees a psychologist. But he's now working on a school magazine and is applying to colleges for next fall. And he plans someday to be a writer. Diane?
Thanks so much, Chris Wallace.
Damn.
We'll be right back.